Përshëndetje dhe mirë se erdhët në episodin e radhës të podcastit ton Business Plus. Sot kam kënaqësinë të kem pranë vetes dy personazhe të rëndësishëm sa i përket lidhjes mes Shteteve të Bashkuara të Amerikës dhe Shqipërisë. Më lejoni që të nis me prezantimin. Kemi këtu të ngarkuar në detyrë të Ambasadës Amerikane në Shqipëri, zotin David Wisner, dhe gjithashtu kreun e Dhomës Amerikane të tregtisë, zotin Grant Van Cleef. I would like to start this conversation with you, Mr. Wisner. How is a typical day of yours here at the embassy, and what has influenced you in choosing this diplomatic career?
Well, listen, thanks for the question, and thank you, of course, for the opportunity for both of us to speak to your audience. This is really special for us. Maybe I'll start with your second question first. I would say what influenced me most about a career in diplomacy was an opportunity to serve. That's something that's very important for Americans of all kinds. And this allowed me to combine a love of things that are happening all around the world with that desire to be of service. We think it's very, very important to give back to your country. And I had an opportunity to do it through this wonderful profession, and that's why I chose it. Now, in terms of a normal day at the embassy, what I'll start by saying is there is absolutely no normal day at the embassy. I'll be frank, it's one of the reasons I really enjoy my profession, is that it constantly keeps you thinking, it constantly keeps you guessing. What I would say is that, here at the US Embassy in Tirana, we have three real priorities. One is building defense ties. Two is building democracy in Albania. And three is business to business ties, which I think is the major thrust of our discussion here. So on any given day, we're meeting with members of the Albanian military, talking about NATO, talking about the importance of Albania meeting its Wales pledge to spend 2% of GDP on defense by 2024, or we're talking with really impressive members of Albania's justice sector who are working so hard to implement the important gains from the 2016 justice reform effort, to meeting with politicians, civil society members. We're working with Albanians to fight trafficking in persons, for instance. And then, of course, talking about business and encouraging American investment in Albania. And of course, encouraging Albanians to invest in the United States, because those sorts of important investments are what are ultimately going to bring our country closer and closer together and build on the terrific 100 years plus of relations that we have between our two countries.
And you, Mr. Van Cleef, I have been told that you have quite some time here in Albania. Can you tell something more about this?
Sure. In common with Mr. Wisner, I'm deeply motivated by service. So I first got here in 1991 with a faith-based nonprofit. Over time, say the first 10 years that I was here, I gradually moved, though, from nonprofit work to for-profit as I saw the Albanian country get back on its feet. At the same time, I had grown in a deep relationship, a personal feeling of just loving the Albanian people and loving what was happening here. So it was a privilege to be part of the evolution of the country in so many stages. But that move from nonprofit to commercial activities, when I realized I was saying that Albania is on its feet, okay, I can go home and do what I was originally going to do, which was real estate development. And I realized there was an opportunity to do that here. So I was involved in the construction sector, the land development sector for a period, as well as doing some consulting and lobbying with the government on behalf of a number of organizations. So I've always been in straddling somewhere between helping and giving ideas and networking to the broader audience, and then to specific commercial activities I've done.
And now you are the head of American Chamber of Commerce. What prompted you to take this role?
So now that would kind of jump us to the next stage. There was a gap there from 2010 to 2021 when I was out of the country and focusing on my kids and some education opportunities. And along the way, I discovered sort of a new career that actually transferred over to having a really successful 10 years involved in startups in California, in America, where I was. So when I people contacted me in 2021 post-COVID and said that Albania is really focusing on that digital jobs. They can sort of leapfrog us up to the next level, slow down that brain drain, give an opportunity to mix our livability here as a country with the smart, intelligent, quality at learning languages. They believe that that could be a central pillar to Albania's development as an economy. So they said, Grant, you love this place. You've got this new career. Come back and do that career here. That led to an opportunity. I visited. 10% of my time became 40% of my time. Now probably 70% of my time is here, which then links to the chamber when the news that somebody who knew the culture had broad business ties, key at networking and lobbying, as I mentioned. That was a good fit. So I was asked to consider candidating to be the president. So last November, I was elected by the members.
Mr. Wisner, which activities or projects have you been supported so far here in Albania?
Well, we're really excited about the fact that in the last several years, since 2020, we've seen an increase in foreign direct investment from the United States into Albania, 3x increase. That's up to $300 million, and a 60% increase in U.S. exports to Albania in the last year alone. There are big American companies in the hospitality sector, in the renewable energy sector, that are looking at opportunities here, advanced stages. Some are already here. And we're really excited about that. There's real opportunities for win-win partnerships. And I think we're especially interested in sort of bringing, as Grant was talking about, bringing some of that American know-how here to do, business in Albania and learn from Albanians.
How do you see the business climate here in Albania? And what are the most challenging things that American investors or businesses face here?
I would lean myself on the leaning towards optimism. As you may be aware, the American Chamber of Commerce here does a business index, and it is moving the right direction. Unfortunately, it's still below 50% of the perception, on business. But I believe the climate is actually better than that. I believe there's some legislative changes happening. I mentioned the word livability earlier. I think people are interested in living here. So could be digital nomads, remote workers, executives in regional offices would give serious thought to living in Albania. I think the regulatory regime is getting better. Taxes maybe aren't the best in the region, but they're still competitive. We're moving up another 4 or 5 points in those indexes. That's good news. It's still, there are still numbers in there that hint that there's challenges. So we do have some informality in the economy still. Too high a percentage is operating in ways that aren't contributing to the tax system, aren't following the rule of law, and that makes it harder for companies. We still have real estate title issues that are a challenge. We still have inspection problems. All of these, which are, there's a cost to business, but the worst part is that they create hesitation. I do believe there's a will in the government to change some of those things. I think there's honest reflection among average Albanians about ways in which we, still that informality side. Mm-hmm. But I envision that we can overcome those things. I think the opportunities are bigger than those challenges, and those challenges, most of them are pretty solvable.
Mr. Wisner, how can we deepen our economic or even trade relation between the two countries?
I think stability, predictability, especially in taxes and the regulatory environment, are absolutely critical. I'll be frank, every time an American business comes in and talks to us, those are high on their list. Land tenure issues, obviously massive, because you got to know that what's under your feet is going to be yours tomorrow. And that's incredibly important. Progress that's been made on justice reform, and of course there needs to be more that's made there to curb corruption, is absolutely critical for American businesses. I hear that all the time. They want to know they're going to get a fair shake. They don't want an advantage. They don't want special treatment. but they want to know that they're going to be able to put their dollars to work in a fair and competitive manner. And, there's a real challenge that Albania has. It's a small market, $24 billion economy, and when you've got big competitors, you've got Greece, you've got Italy, you've got to be able to show that, this is where you should be doing business. And like Grant said, I think there's definitely a will there. And what's going to be very, very important is that there then is follow through on that will across the board. Albanians are very talented. There's high education here. They're impressive people, great language skills. One thing I've truly been really fascinated by here is, yes, Albania was closed off for 45 years, but in the last 30 years, you've got people who visited the entire world, have learned things from abroad, brought ideas back here. There's a very capable potential workforce. And just more needs to be done to kind of nurture that and move it along.
You mentioned before some of the qualities of Albanian citizen here, but is there any aspect of the Albanian culture that have made an impression on you? This is a question for both of you, actually.
So, I think we both kind of repeated the language thing. That I appreciate you mentioning the educational attainment locally, abroad. Sacrifice people are making as families towards those goals. I know that's not unique to Albania, but I think we have those at a high quotient. The language is almost a unique thing. It's really quite amazing how adept they are at that. You actually can feel comfortable living here and security and safety, and that is related to that sense of hospitality and pride. I think there's an ingenuity from, my earliest days. I'm thinking I lived with an Albanian family in 1991, and there was a bicycle that the mother took to her job where she did quality control in the factories. And most evenings, the father would be over there trying to figure out how to keep the darn thing going, connecting things to make the chain to do something. And there's an ability to look at a situation and say, how can I solve that? And I think they advanced that by landing empty-handed in emigration in Italy and Greece and places, and they ended up figuring their way out with no real head start. So I think that ingenuity leads to entrepreneurship, which leads to, an ability to solve problems if they commit themselves to it. They have a sort of a mentality of, it's tough for me because I have a disadvantage, or it's tough for me, what's the state going to give me? They're going to be crippled. But if they use that ingenuity they have, I believe Albanians could be a real force for business transformation.
Yeah, I'd only offer everything you've said, how remarkably welcoming Albanians are, which is
we are proud.
Really, as you should be, remarkably welcoming. The other thing that I would say is a sense of ambition. I've noticed that people here are not satisfied. They want more. They want better. That sort of ambition is absolutely critical to self-betterment. Yeah. And it's the kind of thing that inspires others to be engaged with you. And I found my engagements with everyday Albanians here to be inspiring, nothing short of inspiring.
Mr. Wisner, do you have any recommendation for the Albanian government in order to enhance the foreign investments here in Albania?
It really is about stability, predictability. The fight against corruption, really being engaged in that and committed to that. It's giving American businesses a fair shake. Again, that's what they want. There's no need for anything special for us, but if we know that we can compete, we're going to compete. And then lastly, again, I think really important to understand kind of working out some of the land tenure issues are going to be critical. And obviously, all the efforts that the government is making to keeping young Albanians here is going to be absolutely paramount, because in a knowledge economy, which Europe is, that's where it is, and that's where its future is, having young, motivated, impressive people is going to be absolutely critical.
Mr. Van Cleve, how do you see the development of the startup ecosystem here in Albania? Because you have been engaged in that sector. And what are the potentials of developing the technology sector here?
I think the government was right to highlight it as an area for sort of catalytic growth or this leapfrogging. As we mentioned, that sense of ambition, that educational thing means that there's the potential for these digital jobs, where you take a certain amount of knowledge. That knowledge can be transferred easily. There are education. We're putting things like coding into schools. We're making room, even prioritizing some world-class external training institutions that are here in the private sector, like Holberton and Coding Dojo and others. Both for kids, adolescents, adults, there's a sense that we could create the workforce that's necessary, and then that workforce can attract jobs. Now, those Albanian companies in that IT sector are growing quite quickly. Yes. A number of those are Americans. They can be diaspora Albanians who have come back here. Some are larger companies starting to partner with them. There's an example now, Wolt, who just came as it's part of DoorDash, a big American company. They're big, giant. You might not have a giant Amazon headquarters here, but you might have companies like that dive in and add, to the quality and the sense of competition. Those are factors. So the sense of the market could be huge. There's no reason that Albania couldn't take more of that market, and we can train them relatively easy. Plus, there's some incentives from the government in this sector. I'm optimistic about where that's headed. It still takes some work. We have 2 coders per 1,000 people, and the leader in the Western Balkans has 7, and we can use that as pressure. But Israel, meanwhile, around the corner, which is has 22 per 1,000. So there's a gap there. There's work to be done, but there's no reason that 2 can't become 3, 4, 5, and those companies produce quality, which attracts more. It really could grow quickly.
In conclusion of our conversation, I would like to ask, do you have any message for our audience or the Albanian citizen or even the authorities in local or the government to hear you out now?
We believe firmly that the Chamber is a critical mouthpiece for the private sector. And the more that the chambers can be free to do the type of work that they do, the advocacy for businesses, for real private sector, independent, organic growth is absolutely critical. That's obviously the role Grant plays with the American Chamber, but I'd say that probably extends to the other chambers that are present here. Americans, we really do believe in the power of the free market, and the more freedom that we can have, that these organizations can have, I think it's just really, really important. And we really look forward to more American companies joining the Chamber in the coming years, for the Chamber to be a voice for responsible private sector growth in this country. And an organization, obviously, that can help multiply the message of U.S. values, our interests in the region, in Albania in particular.
I would reiterate the same. I think there's good partnership with the state towards these things. There's some visionary people in there, but we do need to leave room for the private sector to bring its vigor and its entrepreneurship to it. But quickly, I would encourage average Albanians, well, if you're here, don't leave. If you're not here, consider coming back, because I can put this challenge that, we have potential, the opportunities there, but there's still challenges. But I'm pretty confident we're going to overcome a number of those challenges. And when the place is so attractive in the global market, when tourism is increasing, when remote work is drawing more foreigners here, knowledge transfer, income coming in, insertion of capital from America and elsewhere, I think this could be a really booming era in front of us. I think we should lead optimistic and even start to take some courageous steps.
It was a great pleasure, our conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.